In the middle of the sea between Java and Sumatra, there was a small volcanic island called Krakatoa. For many years it had been quiet, a peaceful land covered with green trees and surrounded by blue water. Fishermen often passed by it, never thinking that this silent island would one day make the loudest sound ever heard by mankind. It all began in May 1883. Strange things started happening around Krakatoa. The sea became warmer than usual. The sky often turned orange before sunset, and sailors noticed clouds that glowed even at night. But no one could explain it. Villagers living along the coast laughed it off, saying, "The mountain is just stretching." But deep inside the earth, something dangerous was waking up. A Dutch captain named Ferzen was the first to notice something truly unusual. While sailing near the island, he saw columns of black smoke rising from the mountain. At first, he thought it was just fog, but when the smoke grew higher and darker, he realized it was ash. The captain quickly wrote in his logbook, "Smoke from Krakatoa, looks like fire from the sea." Within days, loud booms began echoing across the ocean. Some said it sounded like cannons, others said it was thunder. But the strange thing was, the sound didn't stop. It came again and again, sometimes shaking the ground miles away. People in nearby villages started to panic. Birds flew away. The animals refused to eat. Even the sea became restless, sending small waves crashing against the shore. But still, most people didn't believe the danger. They had seen Krakatoa smoke before, and it always went quiet again. They didn't know that this time. It wouldn't. On August 26, 1883, the earth around Krakatoa began to tremble. Trees shook. The sea hissed. From miles away, witnesses saw lightning flashing inside dark clouds over the island. Then came a roar, long and deep, as if the world itself was breathing. People along the coast looked toward the horizon. They saw something terrifying. A giant column of fire and ash rising high into the sky, turning day into night. No one knew it yet, but this was only the beginning. The real explosion, the one that would be heard over 3,000 miles away, was still to come. As the sun disappeared behind the thick ash clouds, one fisherman whispered to his friend, "Maybe the island is angry." But before anyone could answer, the sea pulled back, far back, as if the ocean itself was running away. Then came the silence. The kind of silence that only happens right before the world changes forever. In the middle of the sea between Java and Sumatra, there was a small volcanic island called Krakatoa. For many years it had been quiet, a peaceful land covered with green trees and surrounded by blue water. Fishermen often passed by it, never thinking that this silent island would one day make the loudest sound ever heard by mankind. It all began in May 1883. Strange things started happening around Krakatoa. The sea became warmer than usual. The sky often turned orange before sunset, and sailors noticed clouds that glowed even at night. But no one could explain it. Villagers living along the coast laughed it off, saying, "The mountain is just stretching." But deep inside the earth, something dangerous was waking up. A Dutch captain named Ferzen was the first to notice something truly unusual. While sailing near the island, he saw columns of black smoke rising from the mountain. At first, he thought it was just fog, but when the smoke grew higher and darker, he realized it was ash. The captain quickly wrote in his logbook, "Smoke from Krakatoa, looks like fire from the sea." Within days, loud booms began echoing across the ocean. Some said it sounded like cannons, others said it was thunder. But the strange thing was, the sound didn't stop. It came again and again, sometimes shaking the ground miles away. People in nearby villages started to panic. Birds flew away. The animals refused to eat. Even the sea became restless, sending small waves crashing against the shore. But still, most people didn't believe the danger. They had seen Krakatoa smoke before, and it always went quiet again. They didn't know that this time. It wouldn't. On August 26, 1883, the earth around Krakatoa began to tremble. Trees shook. The sea hissed. From miles away, witnesses saw lightning flashing inside dark clouds over the island. Then came a roar, long and deep, as if the world itself was breathing. People along the coast looked toward the horizon. They saw something terrifying, a giant column of fire and ash rising high into the sky, turning day into night. No one knew it yet, but this was only the beginning. The real explosion, the one that would be heard over 3,000 miles away, was still to come. As the sun disappeared behind the thick ash clouds, one fisherman whispered to his friend, "Maybe the island is angry." But before anyone could answer, the sea pulled back, far back, as if the ocean itself was running away. Then came the silence. The kind of silence that only happens right before the world changes forever. After the terrifying explosion, the world went quiet, but not in peace. The sound had already traveled across oceans, mountains, and continents. In cities thousands of miles away, people stopped and looked at the sky, wondering what had happened. In Perth, Australia, people heard a sound like cannon fire. In Mauritius, more than 3,000 miles away, windows shook. On the small island of Rodriguez, a British officer wrote, "The noise was so loud, we thought a ship had exploded in the harbor. But when they looked out to sea, there was nothing. Only a calm horizon." They didn't know that the sound they heard came from a volcano that had just destroyed itself. For the people close to Krakatoa, life became a nightmare. The sea was black with ash and floating debris. Dead fish covered the shores. The air smelled of sulfur, heavy, choking, like burning metal. The sun disappeared for days. When it finally returned, it looked pale and weak, hidden behind a strange red glow. Scientists later discovered that volcanic ash from Krakatoa had spread high into the atmosphere, so high that it circled the Earth several times. The fine particles reflected sunlight, changing the color of the sky everywhere. For months, sunsets around the world turned deep red and purple. Painters in Europe captured the strange skies in their art, not knowing they were painting the light of Krakatoa. Some even thought the world was ending. But while some were amazed by the beauty, others were afraid. Animals acted strange. Temperatures dropped. In many places, crops failed because sunlight was blocked by ash. Even the moon looked different, sometimes blue, sometimes green. Around the world, scientists began to study what had happened. They learned that the sound wave from Krakatoa's blast had traveled around the planet 7 times before fading away. Instruments in London, New York, and Paris recorded small air pressure spikes again and again, each one the echo of Krakatoa's scream moving through the air. It was proof that one explosion on one small island had reached the entire Earth. But the people who lived near Krakatoa didn't care about science. They were trying to survive. Villages were gone, families lost. Many who had escaped the first explosion were later caught by massive tsunamis. In total, more than 36,000 people died, some from fire, some from waves, some from the sound itself. Weeks passed. The sea slowly calmed. The sky began to clear. But when sailors finally returned to the area, they were shocked. Krakatoa was gone. In its place was an empty sea, boiling, bubbling, and full of dead silence. And yet, deep beneath those waters, something was still alive. Because the Earth was not finished yet. It was preparing for Krakatoa's second birth. For many years after the great explosion of 1883, Krakatoa was gone. Where the mighty mountain once stood, there was only open sea, a deep, silent hole filled with boiling water and drifting ash. Sailors avoided the place. They said the sea there was cursed, but the Earth never forgets. In the years that followed, strange things began to happen again. The water near the empty crater grew warm. Bubbles rose to the surface. Sometimes, at night, fishermen saw red light glowing under the waves. They whispered to each other, "The fire is still alive down there." Scientists confirmed it. Krakatoa wasn't dead. It was only sleeping. Then, one quiet morning in 1927, 44 years after the disaster, the sea near Krakatoa started to rumble. The ocean shook, and suddenly a column of smoke burst out of the water. Within hours, fire, steam, and ash shot high into the sky. The world watched as the ocean gave birth to a new island, a child of the old volcano. They named it Anak Krakatoa, which means child of Krakatoa. It grew fast. Every few months it erupted a little, throwing rocks and ash into the air. The new island was small at first, just a few hundred meters wide. But it kept rising year after year, as if the earth was rebuilding what it had lost. By the 1930s, Anak Krakatoa had become a real volcano, smoking, rumbling, alive. Scientists from all over the world came to study it. They wanted to understand why Krakatoa's power was so great and if it could ever happen again. The local people, however, stayed afraid. They remembered the stories told by their grandparents, how the sky went dark, how the sea swallowed their homes, how the loudest sound in history had come from this very place. Even today, Anak Krakatoa remains dangerous. It still erupts often. Small explosions, black smoke, glowing lava rolling down its sides. But in 2018, the volcano reminded everyone of its deadly heritage. A part of it collapsed into the sea, creating a huge tsunami that struck the nearby coasts once again. Hundreds of lives were lost, proof that the child carried its parents' fury. From 1883 to now, Krakatoa's story continues. It is not just a volcano. It is a symbol of nature's power, of Earth's memory, and of how quickly peace can turn into chaos. And deep below the waves, pressure is building again. Scientists say the magma chamber is still active, still growing. They don't know when it will wake again, tomorrow, next year, or in another century. But one thing is certain. When Krakatoa's child roars again, the world will listen, just like it did in 1883. When Krakatoa exploded on August 27, 1883, it didn't just destroy an island, it spoke to the entire world. The sound was so powerful that it became the loudest noise ever recorded in human history. Imagine a sound so strong that it circles the Earth several times. That's exactly what happened. The first explosion at 10:02 a.m. was so violent that people more than 3,000 miles away heard it clearly. In Perth, Australia, a man thought a cannon had fired nearby. In Rodriguez Island, near Africa, people rushed to the harbor thinking a ship had exploded. But there were no ships, no cannons, just the distant voice of Krakatoa crossing the sea and sky. The sound wave traveled around the Earth 7 times before fading away. It broke barometers, instruments used to measure air pressure, all around the world. Scientists in London, Washington, and Paris were shocked when their devices started jumping again and again, hours after the eruption. Each spike meant the sound wave had circled the globe once more. The energy of the blast was beyond imagination. Experts later estimated that Krakatoa's explosion had the power of 200 megatons of TNT, more than 13,000 times stronger than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. It was not just a sound. It was a shock wave through the atmosphere. For people near the island, the noise was deadly. Sailors on ships within 40 kilometers had their eardrums burst. Many fainted. Some were thrown overboard by the force of the air itself. Even those far away said their ears rang for days. In Batavia, now Jakarta, windows shattered and buildings shook as if hit by an earthquake. The pressure wave was so strong that it moved at the speed of sound, about 100-200 kilometers per hour, and yet it continued for hours. Newspapers around the world wrote headlines like, "The loudest sound ever heard by man." An island disappears in a roar, but beyond the destruction, Krakatoa also left behind something mysterious, a strange silence that followed the blast. Survivors said that right after the explosion, everything went quiet for a moment, as if the world had stopped breathing. Even the ocean seemed frozen. Then came the shock wave, the wind, and the roaring sea that destroyed everything. For months after the eruption, the world's skies changed color. Sunsets glowed deep red and purple even in Europe and America. Painters thought it was the end of days. Scientists later realized that it was caused by tiny ash particles floating high in the air. The fingerprints of Krakatoa's voice spread across the atmosphere. The sound had died, but its echo lived on, in science and stories, and in the memory of every place that felt its shock. And though more than a century has passed, no sound on Earth, not from bombs, not from thunder, not even from space, has ever been louder. But some scientists say the Earth still holds forces far greater. And if another Krakatoa rises one day, we might hear the impossible once again. After the Great Explosion, the world entered a strange and haunting beauty. The air was no longer the same. High above the clouds, billions of tiny ash particles from Krakatoa drifted around the planet, carried by the wind. These fine grains of volcanic dust acted like mirrors, bending and reflecting sunlight in strange ways. For months, people around the world looked up at skies they could hardly recognize. In London, the sunsets turned a fiery red. Painters stood by the River Thames, amazed at the sight. One of them, William Ashcroft, made hundreds of drawings of the glowing sky, not knowing he was painting the breath of Krakatoa. In New York, the sky glowed purple at night. In Japan, people saw green moons. In Australia, dawn came hours earlier, not with light, but with a ghostly orange glow. Everywhere, people whispered the same thing. Something has changed in the heavens, but behind this beauty was tragedy. The sunlight that reached the Earth grew weaker because of the thick layer of ash high in the atmosphere. Scientists now know that global temperatures dropped by 1.2 degrees Celsius for nearly 5 years after the eruption. Crops failed in many countries. Some called it the year without a summer. Sailors in the open ocean saw glowing clouds at night, so bright they could read letters on their ships. These were noctilucent clouds, mysterious formations never seen before Krakatoa's blast. Many thought they were signs from God. Others feared another explosion was coming. But even as the world changed, one mystery fascinated everyone: how far the sound had traveled. For months, weather stations around the world kept recording faint air pressure movements, the invisible heartbeat of Krakatoa's explosion echoing again and again. It was like the Earth itself was ringing like a bell. People began to write songs, poems, and legends about it. Some said Krakatoa had screamed so loud that it had scarred the sky. Others believed the explosion had opened a door to the underworld. But scientists saw something else, proof of nature's power far beyond human understanding. Even years later, the ash in the air still influenced weather patterns. Strange rainbows appeared in the morning. Nights glowed red. The world's weather had been changed by one single island, gone in seconds, yet remembered for decades. By 1888, the skies began to clear. But the fear of Krakatoa never faded. People still wondered, could it happen again? Could another volcano scream that loud? And deep under the sea, something was stirring again, a silent reminder that the Earth never forgets its anger. Because while humans see time in years, the Earth remembers in ages. Years passed. The skies cleared. The world moved on. But Krakatoa's voice was never forgotten. It had spoken once, louder than anything before or after, and its echo still lives in the memory of the Earth. Scientists continued to study the event for decades. They realized that Krakatoa had not only destroyed an island but also changed the planet itself. The explosion released so much energy that it was equal to the power of 10,000 nuclear bombs. The sound waves circled the globe 7 times, and the ash cloud blocked sunlight across continents. Even today, instruments in weather stations carry lessons learned from Krakatoa's blast. How sound, air, and pressure can travel across the entire world. It was more than a disaster. It was a discovery. For the people who lived through it, the memories were carved deep into their hearts. Old fishermen told their children stories of the day the sea ran away and the sky turned black. Survivors said the sound was so loud that it felt like the world itself was screaming. And when silence finally came, it was the silence of something broken. A silence that no one could ever forget. But nature has a strange way of healing itself. From the ashes of the old Krakatoa, a new island was born, Anak Krakatoa, the child of Krakatoa. It grew slowly, erupting again and again, as if continuing the story of its parent. Scientists who visit it today can still feel the ground tremble under their feet, a heartbeat, quiet but steady. To this day, Anak Krakatoa reminds the world that the Earth is alive. Every mountain, every wave, every gust of wind, all of it is part of a living planet that breathes, changes, and remembers. The sound of Krakatoa may have faded, but its message remains. No matter how strong humans become, we are still guests on this Earth. In modern times, satellites watch over volcanoes, measuring heat and gas. Ships pass carefully through the Sunda Strait, the same waters that once glowed red from fire. Tourists visit the area, standing on the edge of history, where one of nature's greatest events once shook the planet. But sometimes, when the sea is quiet and the wind is still, locals say they can hear something, a faint echo deep beneath the waves, a soft rumble like a giant sleeping under the ocean. They smile and whisper, "Krakatoa is dreaming again, because legends never die." They wait, they rest, they return, and one day, maybe not soon, but someday, the earth will roar again, and the world will remember the day it heard the loudest sound in history.